This is the Astrology and Tarot Show with Jessica Adams.
Thanks, Shane. Here is your psychic astrology for the week starting March 23. Your tarot this week can be decoded at jessicaadams.com. Aries, the Ace of Wands. Taurus, the Hermit. Gemini, the Three of Cups. Cancer, the Emperor. Leo, the World. Virgo, Temperance. Libra, the Devil. Scorpio, the Ten of Wands. Sagittarius, the Lovers. Capricorn, the Ten of Cups. Aquarius, the Three of Wands. And Pisces, the Ace of Pentacles. If you have Aries factors in your birth chart, on March 28, Saturn at 5 Aries is sextile Pluto at 5 Aquarius. So your name, title, reputation, appearance, and profile is now a waiting game, and it will take a test of patience from you. If you have Aquarius factors in your birth chart, the same day, March 28, you have this quite unusual pattern. Your group or your friend will be at the heart of questions about control, who or what is top dog, and who or what has the upper hand. The potential for a sensible agreement is there. Aries. Well, the oddly familiar part of this workload and well-being cycle is the strong sense of déjà vu that accompanies some discussions. It is extremely likely that the man or woman who now has the biggest influence over how stuck you feel is a karmic connection. What was at stake 18 or 19 years ago may have been a doctor or a corporation. In any case, you'll be amazed at how philosophical you can feel about what is unfolding, almost as if you have seen it all before. Well, according to your astrology chart, you probably have. The South Node in your 6th house is with you until July. The South Node is going backwards through the sign of Virgo, which in both your solar and natal chart rules workload and well-being. And in astrology, whatever goes backwards in terms of your chart also does so in terms of what is so familiar. The reason that everything is in a kind of a revolving door for you is that it is the best way to get you to change on the inside, because the only way that you can really get through this is to alter the way that you approach the situation, the people, or the circumstances. And that means perhaps becoming more philosophical, as I've mentioned, developing even a sense of humor about it, definitely using the fact that you know what is coming next with work, with university or college, with unpaid work, maybe with your physical health, your mental health, using that absolute knowing that what you're about to hear you've heard before. Well, it comes down to understanding this is all research, and when you know it, you can use it to become maybe more content about what is going on, but also perhaps ahead of the game as well. The cycle does stop. It stops in the final week of July. And the good news is that if we go forward in time to your chart, we can see the biggest and best solutions and opportunities in 12 years with your workload and well-being arriving in the middle of 2027, taking you to the middle of 2028 with Jupiter in Virgo. Taurus. Well, do plan ahead to July and August for the best possible reconnection or connection with a brother, cousin, sister, or neighbour, as the 3rd house, which rules all these people, is where Jupiter will land in Leo for the first time in 12 years on June 30, gathering speed in July and August. So maybe those 2 months are already in your calendar, Taurus. Even if they're not, you will find that life offers you so much more of what you want and need as you go into the middle of this year, and the cycle lasts until the middle of 2027. Whether things are basically good with a brother, cousin, sister, or neighbour, or whether there are issues that need to be resolved, Jupiter has a reputation in astrology, both Eastern and Western, for being the bringer of solutions and also open doors and opportunities. So, for example, it may be a sister who is the gateway for you as you go into July and August, or if you've had issues with a neighbour, you may find that towards the middle of this year, you finally start to see some way through that too. For lots of you this week, there are clues about those key 2 months, but there's momentum here. It doesn't just stop in August. What I'm really talking about here is a major push-off or launch, And it will actually be July and August that gives you what you need to keep going, with more results coming in after September as well. Gemini. Well, if you're still doing the rounds, seeing the same old things, hearing people say the same things within the family circle, the household, or in connection with your real estate, you need to know that this will stop in the final week of July. What we have here is the South Node in Virgo in your solar fourth house, which rules your people and your place. And the South Node is highly unusual in astrology because it goes backwards and never forwards. So at the moment, what you're dealing with is familiar from 18 or 19 years ago, which is the last time this cycle unfolded. It may be literal for some of you, so it may be the same person. It may, for example, be your father again, or it may even be the same apartment for the second time. In other cases, what you're recognizing, if you think about it, is a kind of symbolic return. This happens because you are owed karmically, or you owe on some level, and your horoscope will unfold backwards until there's some kind of settlement or closure, and this would happen no later than the final week of July for you. It may be that July and August are already in your diary, Gemini, for example, with the end of a lease on a house, or maybe because of a family event. However it's shaping up for you, and you may not even be able to see what's coming at the moment, the way through this cycle, which has been well documented, is to deliberately alter your perspective so that you come around to seeing it with a filter that brings you the most comfort and the most reassurance. So rather than just react to the fact that nobody and nothing seems to be changing, no matter what you do and say, you may want to start transforming yourself on the inside. Doing so makes you a better person anyway, a more contented person. And the bottom line is, from July, this loop or rewind situation is finished. Cancer. At this time, with foreigners and foreign places, you will hit a repeat of a situation that you went through 18 or 19 years ago. Depending on your age, it may also have recurred 18 or 19 years before that, and so on. This is the well-known nodal cycle, the North Node in Pisces in your solar ninth house of foreigners and foreign countries. And as they knew, possibly at Stonehenge, this cycle goes back and back and back. So you may be on constant rewind with just one country. Could be Israel, could be Saudi Arabia. You may be on constant rewind with just one culture or one accent or language, and that may be at home. It may be in your own town or your own house or apartment, for example. However it's unfolding for you, and it may be something as big as an entire group of nations, you need to know that just because nothing is really shifting out there for you does not mean that you're not making progress. In fact, the more that you alter your point of view, which is something I've been talking about to the other signs, in astrology, the more contented you feel, the more philosophical you become as a human being, and maybe the more seasoned you become as well. This cycle will be back in about 18 or 19 years, but for the moment, you need to know that in the final week of July, just around your birthday, you are well and truly over it. And this may happen because the person, the organization, or the country is no longer an issue, or because you change your point of view so completely that you're no longer bothered by it. Leo. Foreign communication, the written and spoken word with an accent in another language or from a different culture, suggests an extremely important time for you as we begin to see lots of transits gathering in the sign of Aries in your ninth house, which rules other cultures, other nationalities and other countries. This may be because you are looking at a trip away or even relocation. It could be because you are dealing with a different nationality for whom your language is not their first language, and that may be at home or at work. The ninth house of your chart, which Aries rules, is something that most people come to terms with by understanding it in terms of higher education, university life, the world part of the World Wide Web, and so on. It can also point to export and to emigration. However you're being affected, your rule of the sun is also passing through this zone of your chart as you go through April. So light will be shed on what this is all about at heart. Chiron, Neptune and Saturn are all in Aries, all in your ninth house of foreigners and foreign countries. And as a result of that, you may need a three-pronged approach, Leo. One part of you may have to be up for an experiment without guarantees. Another part of you may have to be up for what is an escape from reality. And finally, there will be a waiting game or a test of patience. A classic example of this would be applying for emigration, but it may be that you're dealing with other nationalities because of your work situation. Think about the three-pronged approach, and if you want a more personal view, you can always draw a tarot card from my website at jessicaadams.com. Virgo. Remembering that you are an earth sign helps you deal with the floating financial, real estate or ownership issue. This gives you a more solid grounding in terms of the family or a partner, which will help you find a strong emotional platform so that you can deal with those issues which could leave you all at sea unless you anchor yourself. This may be about a house or apartment or a real estate investment. It could be about shares, for example, your will or their legacy. In other cases, you are dealing with a joint bank account, a classic case of marriage and mortgage, and then naturally there are your children and your wider extended family. This transit is Chiron, Neptune and Saturn, all in Aries, all in your 8th house, matters of a joint financial nature. And juggling it is probably more demanding than coming up with a blended approach, because at the moment you may be trying to separate your response 2 or 3 different ways just to cope with the many different sides of what is going on. What your horoscope is suggesting is that you may want to blend the way that you handle the 3 cycles. So one part of you may need to experiment and see what you can get away with. Another part of you may want to leave this reality and go into a holiday from the reality. And yet another part of you may want to be patient, stoic, and play a waiting game. A classic example of this would be paying off a debt or a large bill by borrowing money at a low interest rate. That brings in Chiron, Neptune, and Saturn. But you'll have your own story. At the moment, this cycle is proceeding all the way through April. Light will be shed and the numbers will be lined up in a way that makes sense to you very shortly. Libra. So at the moment, you're going through the triple cycle of Chiron, Saturn and Neptune, all in Aries, all in your 7th house, which rules your partner, be it professional, platonic or personal. And it also rules anybody or anything who is against you. It's represented by the scales. So if you visualize this as a pair of scales with yourself on one side and him or her on the other, you'll have a sense of what this cycle is all about. It's picking up speed. And in fact, April brings a big sign-off decision for you about this man or woman. At the same time, if you are up against the opposition, an enemy, any kind of perhaps legal opposition, as we are talking about the scales of justice here, you will find that things start to build from this week forward, asking you to make a big yes or no decision, even if you are a Libran, well before May. Of course, some Librans will sit in the middle of the scales or sit on the middle of the seesaw, which is what your sign is well known for doing. But you also have a profound sense of what's fair, and you also have a strong sense of harmony and symmetry, which is why this particular period of your life defines who you are. You may have been with this partner for a long time, or it may be relatively new. In other cases, this is your ex and you are having issues with them. And finally, there may be some kind of conflict here where it's you and your partner against the world. That can happen too. At the moment, the best thing to remember is that this is a triple transit, as I've mentioned. So what you're going through requires you to experiment, which is Chiron, always about the maverick approach to life. It's also about escaping from the real world, which is pretty unusual. But this is a long cycle with Neptune. And even though there is also a test of patience or a waiting game with Saturn, you are also being offered what I can only describe as a holiday from reality, or a vacation from the reality, with or through this person. So there's quite a lot to think about at the moment. You may decide to combine all of that into one approach, experimenting, waiting, and also somehow escaping. Or you may decide to split up the tactics and tackle this three separate ways. The actual waiting game doesn't stop until the first quarter of 2028, Libra. So whatever you're up to, try and remember that you are in this for the long haul. Scorpio. Your approach to babies, children, teenagers, and younger adults, your own or other people's, your approach even to a totally different younger generation, like Generation Z, will be helped by your experience and wisdom this week, as you will hit repetitive scenarios of situations you've faced before, over the last few months, or even from 18 or 19 years ago. For some Scorpio people, this is actually a grown-up adult child who was born 18 or 19 years before. However you are affected, this is the last of the North Node in Pisces cycle. It stops in the final week of July. This sense of familiarity or knowingness is one of the reasons it's now possible to take it in your stride. It's almost a rule with this cycle that no matter how differently you try to do things, no matter how much you want to change what's going on or alter the patterns, you find yourself the following day with the kaleidoscope turned back where it was the day before. And if you go back to your old emails or photographs or documents from 18 or 19 years ago, you may well find the pattern yourself. You are owed spiritually, or you owe spiritually on some level, and it is about a younger generation, no matter what age you are. As I said, the cycle does stop in July. In fact, you will be amazed by how differently life feels to you. But you also, in the meantime, can alter your attitude so that you become more philosophical about what's going on. Sagittarius. The fifth house transits in Aries now rule your involvement with children or teenagers, babies, students, and a younger generation. Maybe the interests, projects, or plans which involve them, or a very fundamental issue, for example, IVF or child custody. Maybe your issue here is a grown-up son or daughter. It may be more broad, so it could be a class of teenagers that you're teaching. What's happening here goes straight into April as well, as these transits in Aries in your horoscope continue. My bet would be that this is intensely personal and is very much about your current, former, or potential partner. Because as we go into the final week of April, Uranus enters this zone of your chart and changes everything overnight. So what you're dealing with is probably very much a personal matter for you. Not so much a class that you teach or a generation as a whole, but very much about your relationship with a key man or a particular woman. Freedom will be the watchword from the final week of April for you and him or you and her. What you're being asked to do this week is figure out the relationship that you do have with this younger generation and what you're going to do about it, as a decision is pending no later than April 2026. Capricorn. People don't stretch themselves enough in this internet cycle that you're going through because everything feels as if it's happened before, online. The media too. The names and the faces may change, Capricorn, but the song remains the same in terms of digital. This is wasting a chance to go forward, though, from the final week of July. Just because experience has made you a bit of a seasoned old-timer with the web or the media at the moment, is no reason to give up on trying something new after July when the cycle ends. Sometimes this transit, which is all about the North Node in Pisces in your third house, can be about core communication issues like sight, hearing, or literacy, maybe speech. If it's on that level, yes, you are also going around in circles, but it stops in July. In the majority of cases, as you go through the next 7 days, you'll realise that you're being shown something or someone that is awfully familiar from 18 or 19 years before. The reason for that is that the North Node always moves backwards in time and never forwards. And although you are doing your best to try and make things run differently, it's also true that it's pretty difficult to do that on this cycle. In the meantime, in the final week of April, Uranus goes into Gemini, which rules the media and the internet. And on a global level, you are going to see a revolution. It may be with social media, it may be with the computer industry itself, and so on. But it will have an impact. In the meantime, you can alter your attitude towards the repetition, even if you can't change the situation. Aquarius, well, Jupiter in Leo is good news ahead for partnership, and this week you may find that July and August are turning up on your calendar. Look at marriage, de facto partnership, or committed relationship. Look at work partnership and also any platonic, double act, or duet. The 7th house of your chart works in many different ways, and although marriage is standard, as is living together, it's also true that it can show up with more unusual pairings in your life as well. You will have this luck cycle with you until the middle of 2027, and the person concerned is either in front of you now with obvious clues and signs, or you're being set up to meet them or re-meet them. At the moment, if you remember your partnerships from 12 years ago, you will realise that you planted an acorn, and that acorn is about to become an oak tree throughout the months of July and August, continuing into the middle of 2027. The Jupiter cycle in astrology is regarded as the solution cycle. So even if your relationship or marriage is on the rocks, you will find amicable separation or successful counselling is more than likely once you go through the months of July and August, as all the planets start to gather in your opposite sign of Leo. If you are single, this cycle is well known in astrology for delivering unto you a person who could help you expand your life through a partnership which grows with you. This person may be there on the horizon. This week may bring you closer towards them, or you will find that a situation arises now which makes perfect sense by the time you get to August, because it was the stepping stone that you needed. Pisces. Well, the North Node is now in Pisces, in your zone of image and reputation, appearance and profile. I've been chatting a bit this week about the North Node in Pisces, your own sign, because it's affecting all 12 signs of the zodiac. And this strange cycle always takes you back into the past. So if you go back to 18 or 19 years ago and even look at old emails or photographs, maybe old news clippings, you'll begin to see all the pieces of the jigsaw coming together. You are being asked to go for closure, because 18 or 19 years ago, nothing was ever fixed, finished, or final. It may have been about your mirror reflection, or it may have been about your internet profile. Perhaps it was your title or your reputation preceded you. Sometimes it's a basic question here about how you look physically, whether it's your height, your shape, or just the cut of your jib. This cycle will end, of course, in the final week of July. But until then, if you feel as if you've been here before, you probably have. The way through, as with all these nodal cycles, is to understand that the whole point of them is to respect the fact that you know what's coming next and use it. In fact, you can be quite cunning about it, Pisces. Many, many people in the public eye under the sign of Pisces are now experiencing this through what they're dealing with online, with social media, and in some cases with the media itself. However you are being affected, it's also true that if you have anything in Aries in your birth chart, then you're going to find that it's twice as important. In fact, by the time you get to the end of April, you will have made a big sign-off decision about yourself, whether it's losing weight, for example, or even beating a retreat with the way that you've approached the internet to date. Have a look at your chart. If you do have anything in Aries, this will be, as I've mentioned, twice as important. And that's it for the 12 signs of the zodiac this week. You can follow up at jessicaadams.com with a personal free reading for yourself using the modern I Ching. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch up with you next week.